methods that my teacher didn't even know about, that I developed this way of processing that wall down there that's, it's a really difficult thing to do. 2,000ths of an inch thick walls, perfectly parallel, say 2-inch deep hole or something like this, and so the guy says, though he knows it only took him an hour and a half to knock this thing out, he says, well, a while, and so he leaves this engineer, because this is smart business.
I'm laughing because that was one of my favorite expressions, a while.
Yeah. And the reason is, it's not, if you've done things, and I've done a lot of things like this. I used to, produce machines that, chassis for machines that etch the circuitry in silicon chips, and the engineers didn't even know how to design them so that they could actually be made to the accuracy that they were requiring, and they needed me to revise all this stuff, and I've been a key person in engineering. And so these are real world scenarios that I'm throwing at you. These are not just dreams. And this is actually how the real world works. So the student, being a smart guy, says a while. And it might have taken him, like I said, an hour and a half. And this guy who's asking him is expecting it to be, 60 hours. Mm-hmm. And he's saying, a while. What does this kid mean? 10 hours or something? If it took him a while, maybe he's way faster. Maybe he's a really trick guy, because this is something that not just anybody can make. He knows that because he's an engineer, because he's tried to get this thing from all over the world. And he thinks, I'm going to throw this guy a proposition here. He says, I got some blueprints I'd like to show you. He says, and I want you to tell me, what you think you could make these things for. And the kid says, sure, fine. He says, could you look at them right away? I've got them in the trunk of my car. And the kid says, well, why not? Just bring them in. So he brings them into this exposition, and they unfold this. One page is all he needs to see, this one drawing. And by God, it's an object not too different than this one that he's produced for this exhibition, and he's got a second prize for it. And he sees the thing, and he immediately envisions, that how all the processes he's already mastered are to be deployed to make this thing, which is very little different. And he says, I don't know, I can probably knock those out, in 10 hours apiece. And the guy's jaw drops, because that's 1/6 of the present cost that his company is paying. And he also notices that this kid, I don't know whether he's done some extra polishing or anything, but there aren't even any machine marks on the surface of this product. And so this guy says, man, this kid looks like he can do higher quality. He says, that quality there for 10 hours apiece? And the kid says, I guarantee it. And the kid is actually thinking in his mind, well, I did one off in an hour and a half, and I think I can get that down to 45 minutes apart here in a month, by the time I produce, I'll say 100 of these, And so the guy says, if you can do that, you could prospectively win a contract from us to produce, let's just say 20,000 of these a year. And the kid's eyebrows go up, and he realizes, well, he's got a serious fish on the hook here, and that he has to, from here on out, totally professional manner, deal with, this prospect. He says, well, listen, how about I do 1, 2, 3, however many, just a few of these, and you inspect them and decide, whether or not you will award me, not maybe the full contract, but if I perform to your standards through the first 1,000 pieces, that you'll pay, let's just say, 10 hours of machine time at $100 an hour, $1,000 a piece for these, with $100 for materials, which is probably way high, but well, let's just call it $1,000 a piece then. So anyway, so what happens? This guy asks his teacher if he can use the shop after hours with nobody watching him working on a secret project that would help him win a contract. And the teacher says, well, look, I'm correcting papers every night between this hour and this hour. If you want to use the shop, you can even plywood a partition off a little section over there where you're going to be working on this mill that you're going to be using, and the lathe when you use the lathe, and you go over there and do your work while I'm correcting papers. And if you can do it, handle it in 2 hours a night, I'll let you go ahead and use the shop, and I won't bother you, and you can work in complete secrecy there. So he says fine, and this kid sleeps on it a few nights. Another brainchild hits him, which even gives him a more thrilling approach to producing this product before he even goes after the first one. This kind of thing happens to some such people all the time. And like he said, 10 hours, and he thinks he can do it in an hour and a half and get it down to 45 minutes, and the very first one he does in just under an hour. Okay? He doesn't even use the first evening of the shop up. Okay, so he finishes this thing, thanks the teacher, says he's done, cleaned up his mess and everything. Nobody is ever unhappy because this guy does everything right. And so he calls the fellow up and says he's got one ready already. And he leaves this engineer to think that he must have worked all night after it and says to come and pick it up and inspect it. And so they take it to their shop and go over it with dial indicators and all kinds of fixtures that they test quality, and they're just amazed. This thing's cool. He's got a better product than this company that they're paying megabucks. They're paying, let's just say, they're paying $60,000 for what they're just going to get for $1,000 here. And this kid, in effect, is not making $100 an hour for machine time. He's making $1,000 an hour because he did the 10-hour job in an hour on the first try, and he's only going to improve upon that. So this company then says, all right, let's give him a contract which is worth $250,000. Okay, to produce $250,000 of these things. And so the kid is just graduating that month. And he takes this contract down to our common monetary foundry, which replaces the central banking system. And he says, okay, I'm so-and-so, and I am just graduating from trade school, and I have been awarded this contract if I can put together a machine shop to do it. This contract pays me $200,000 for $250,000 for 250 of these objects that I can make in 1 hour apiece. I need 2 Bridgeport mills. I need 1 9-inch swing lathe. I need a cutoff saw and a drill press is all I need for a shop. There's a building over on J Street that I would like to rent. And I need, I don't know what the cost of a Bridgeport is anymore, but $5,000 a piece for these mills, which last 50 years. We could finance them over 25 years. And this guy would be paying, $20 a month for the mills. And other equipment that he need. Will you certify my creditworthiness subject to this contract being the collateral? In other words, I will pay the debt off out of this contract should I succeed. Well, we look at this guy and we maybe call his teacher and do whatever normal processes might be done to validate that this guy's got the integrity to follow through on this, and basically everybody gives him the green light. And so the Common Monetary Foundry allows him to issue his promissory note to buy this equipment, which costs diddly, okay? And in fact, he makes 50 of these 250 things, and he pays for an entire shop. And instead of going out and working 10 or 20 years of his life, hoping to save enough to someday have his own shop when all of his great thinking and efforts are profiteered, exploited by someone else. Instead, he starts from the very beginning being a winner because he is a winner. because mathematically perfected economy enables him to issue promissory obligations which are minimal, which are justified by a proven ability to earn, which far exceeds, the debt that he's assuming. So that's the difference, the real differences in the world from what we have now. Instead of paying whatever $2, $3, $4, $5,000 a month for homes, we may be paying $10 a month. If it's a 100-year-old house, and it's near the end of its lifespan, it might cost virtually nothing. I mean, there's going to be no homelessness so long as we're going to have every monetary ability to sustain whatever industry we're capable of, and no one but us gets the profit of our own work. Under mathematically perfected economy alone, can we trade each other for equal measures of our own work, whatever, as this person asked, we determine that to be. But so this kid, he determined value. This engineer, he determined value with great tolerance. And yet, this is how business is done. When he can reduce his price from his cost on this object from $60,000 to $1,000, it's no skin off his butt that the fact is that this kid is making $1,000 as a beginning machinist with exceptional skills and deserves it.
Absolutely.
He deserves it because he is that much better than the existing competition. And that's the way the world ought to work, in my opinion.
Absolutely. If you have the intellectual capability and the capacity and the talent, and you can find somebody who's prepared to offer you such a contract, then you deserve the reward.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And you're doing everyone a favor.
Exactly.
That company is reduced its cost on that object to 1/60th in my example, which is, rather dramatic, I admit. But in truth, these things happen in life all the time. I mean, you can't get to my age and participate in these things and not, be a skilled person and not deliver to, even to these extents, to people. I mean, I've done these things many times in my life, and they're ever less possible. And it isn't because you can't do more with more skill that you accumulate. Instead, it's on the contrary, because you can't get financing. You can't afford financing. The market can't afford financing. Nobody can afford to even exist anymore, and so that's your choice. Do you want monetary justice, a system which accommodates monetary justice, or do you want a system which imposes monetary injustice, and not only imposes monetary injustice, but multiplies it to an ever-escalating degree until you suffer complete dispossession and dysfunctionality of all skill? You can't practice anything, and that's what's right around the corner for us. And all we have to do is wake up and say, the only government that serves us is a government that gets these bankers out of the equation. They are not bankers. They're mere publishers of our promissory obligations. And all of these banks that are collapsing, you're saying to yourself, maybe this guy's wrong. Banks can collapse. No, I said a central bank can't collapse. Why? All the central bank does is collect profit from issuing promissory obligations at negligible cost, virtually no cost whatsoever. That's all it does. The banks you see collapsing are the middleman. And so what happens in this lie in which they actually only publish our promissory obligations is that they claim they're lending it. How do they do this? They claim to lend it to these exterior banks, which are the middlemen between us and the central bank. And that bank, in quote-unquote borrowing the quote-unquote money from this central bank, it becomes obligated to repay it. Repay it. That's another lie. They're not repaying money. That money didn't even exist until they published it in a circulation as the promissory obligation of the debtor to the real creditor, who even the peripheral bank is not. The real creditor is Vince, who gave up the $100,000 house for the promissory obligation. So this very idea that interest is justified is nullified by the obfuscation of the